What's up, guys? Welcome to the video. March Madness is right around the corner. So in this video, I'm going to be going over some conferences that have multiple Sweet 16 contending teams. I left out a few conferences like the Mountain West. I don't see anybody but San Diego State having a realistic chance. I left out some mid-major schools like Florida Atlantic, Kent State, Oral Roberts. So don't think I forgot about y'all. I just didn't put them in there for the sake of the video. Like Florida Atlantic's 24-3, they could easily make the Sweet 16. Kent State gave some problems to Houston and Gonzaga earlier in the year, so you can't count them out. Then Oral Roberts, they had a Sweet 16 run a couple years ago and almost beat my Razorbacks to go to the Elite Eight, but luckily they didn't. I actually know a guy that went to school about 10 miles from me from high school that went to Oral Roberts and was hooping at Oral Roberts, man. So shout out to RJ Glasper. But let's get on to the video. Just to get some of the weaker or the smaller conferences out of the way, I'm going to go through three of those quickly. These are conferences that I only see having one legitimate Sweet 16 contender or none at all and just a couple NCAA tournament teams. So for the American Athletic Conference, I do think Houston will go to the Sweet 16, might even go further. They're one of the best teams in the nation right now. Besides them, Memphis has a shot at the NCAA tournament. If Kendrick Davis comes back, their point guard, DeAndre Williams has been great for them this season. And Penny Hardaway obviously has been great. But if Kendrick Davis comes back from his ankle injury, I think it was, I think they will go to the NCAA tournament, but not past the first round. As well as the West Coast Conference with Gonzaga and St. Mary's, I really would pick only one of these two teams go to the Sweet 16. St. Mary's has the point guard and Aiden Mahaney, Logan Johnson. Aiden Mahaney can take this team almost wherever he wants them to go. But Gonzaga also has Drew Timme, Strother. They just had the pieces to do it. Mark Few has been such a pivotal piece in that program for the last decade. And if I had to pick, I would pick one of those teams to go to the Sweet 16. So, in my opinion, the West Coast Conference will get one, and I'm really not sure who it would be. Another two-team conference is the Pac-12 with Arizona and UCLA. And besides them, it's USC, Utah, just not too great of teams. I know they can beat some high-level teams, but just not too many great teams in the Pac-12 besides those top two. And for Arizona, I will pick them to go to the Sweet 16 as well as UCLA. So I picked two Pac-12 teams, and just UCLA just has so many pieces with Tiger Campbell, Jaime Jaquez, Amari Bailey, Arizona with Courtney Ramey, the bigs down low, Tubelis. I just can't pick against them. So I believe both of those will go to the Sweet 16, and the Pac-12 will have two teams in the Sweet 16. Moving on to the ACC, where a lot of people think it's a down year in the ACC, and I really just think it's from teams that you wouldn't expect it from, like NC State, Miami, Pittsburgh, Clemson. You're just not used to Duke and North Carolina kind of having mediocre seasons, which Duke is starting to get it together. Jeremy Roach, Filipowski, Lively, they're really starting to get it together, especially with Dariq Whitehead back. So scary team, could be a Sweet 16 contending team. I'm not going to pick them to go that far, but like Miami with the three-headed monster, they got Jordan Miller, Nigel Pack, Isaiah Wong, they're big, Norchad Omier, Jim Larinaga is a heck of a coach. So I think Miami will go to the Sweet 16. They're one of my picks, but also NC State, Terquavion Smith, DJ Burns, the big with ballerina feet is what I've heard people call him before. And I'm not going to pick them to go to the NC State, but they have the guards to be able to do it. And Virginia is another pick of mine that will go to the Sweet 16 from the ACC. Kihei Clark, Armand Franklin, Gardner, Vanderplas, they just had the pieces to do it. And Kihei Clark can just stabilize the game. And we all know how good Virginia's defense is every year. So I will pick Virginia and Miami to come out of the ACC and go to the Sweet 16. Moving south to the SEC, it's been a really weird year in this conference. Alabama is the clear number one team in the conference. They are one of the best teams in the nation. They just have all the right pieces, man. Brandon Miller, stud freshman. Bediako, just a shot blocker. Sears, Clowney, Javon Quinterly in the point guard role, that kind of a leader on this team. Jaden Bradley is the actual point guard who just such a good playmaker and just holds the whole team down. Nate Oates has done such a good job with that program, and they have all the right pieces to make a championship run, let alone a Sweet 16 run. Now, you probably know about the crime that was committed by Darius Miles, a former member of the Alabama team, earlier in the season, who shot and killed a woman. And Brandon Miller is supposed to have gave him the gun. That's what a report said yesterday. So huge news coming out of that, huge news for the whole world of college basketball. Obviously bigger than basketball. Prayers go out to the woman who was killed's family. For basketball's sake, if Brandon Miller is suspended, and no reports have come out about that yet, then that would change my pick, and Alabama probably would not be a Sweet 16 pick in my opinion. For Tennessee, it's been a really rough period for Tennessee. They had a huge win over Texas, and I think to that point they had 2 or 3 losses on the whole season. I can actually check. I think 3 losses. Since the win over Texas, they have lost to Florida. They were in a close one with Auburn. They have lost to Vanderbilt and Missouri on buzzer-beating 3-pointers. They've lost to Kentucky twice. They just lost them this past Saturday. And then last night, they lost to Texas A&M in a really tough A&M environment at College Station. But yeah, just another loss for Tennessee. They are 9-6 in the SEC, 4th in the conference. And just really have no faith in this team. I know Rick Barnes is a great coach. Ziegler can just be erratic, man. Vescovi has grown to be a leader, but they just don't have a go-to guy. So I'm not going to pick Tennessee to go to the Sweet 16. For Arkansas, it's been kind of a disappointing year for Arkansas. They lost probably the freshman of the year, Nick Smith Jr., still a lottery pick after missing so much time. And he is finally starting to get it together. He got 30 minutes the other night versus Florida. Yeah, he got 30 minutes versus Florida. Then last night we put up 97 on Georgia, and he had 26 points, his career high. So starting to get it together. You know Eric Musselman, man, we are a tournament team, a team built for the tournament. These last 2 years we've gone to the Elite 8. Might be a homer pick, but I am picking Arkansas to go to the Sweet 16. For Texas A&M, they are 2nd in the conference, and they're so good in the SEC for some reason this year, but their out-of-conference schedule was horrendous. But Buzz Williams, he complained all last year about them not getting into the NCAA tournament after reaching the SEC championship, and I think he was right. I think they should have went to the NCAA tournament last year, but he's getting his opportunity this year, and we'll see what he makes out of it. I'm not going to pick Texas A&M to go to the Sweet 16. For Kentucky, man, really up and down road for Kentucky. They're starting to get it together this past week after another huge win against Tennessee, their 2nd time beating Tennessee this year. And they're starting to get it together with Tshiebwe, reigning National Player of the Year. Cason Wallace and Chris Livingston has been so good for that team. So I'm not going to pick them to go to the Sweet 16, but they're really starting to get it together. And it really wouldn't surprise me any. So for the SEC, I'm picking Alabama and Arkansas to go to the Sweet 16. Till about 3 weeks ago, you could say the Big Ten was having a down year. But since then, man, this conference has ramped up. Purdue was the clear favorite for most of the season until about 3 weeks ago. Then they lost to Indiana in a really, really tough game, really great environment in Indiana. They lost to Northwestern. Then this past Thursday night, they just lost to Maryland. So it's really starting to ramp up. Northwestern has a shot to win the regular season title, and that would be something after the start Purdue had to the season. I believe they were 22-1 at one point. Now they are 24-4. So Northwestern does have a shot, but I will pick Purdue to go to the Sweet 16. Best player in basketball, Zach Edey. Just unstoppable, man. Braden Mitchell, one of my favorite point guards to watch, is really starting to get it together. Fletcher Lawyer, their 3-point shooter. Painter's just such a good coach. So I will pick Purdue to go to the Sweet 16, and they'll probably go further than that. Now, besides that, it's just kind of an array of teams. Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern, like I talked about, Maryland, like I talked about. But I will pick Indiana to be the 2nd team in the Big Ten to go to the Sweet 16. They have the National Player of the Year runner-up in Trace Jackson Davis. Just a side note, the Big Ten has 3 of probably the 4 runner-ups for National Player of the Year in their conference alone. You got Zach Edey, number 1, clear number 1. You got Trace Jackson Davis. I'd probably put Jalen Wilson from Kansas at number 3. Then you have Jalen Pickett from Penn State, who has just been phenomenal. So 3 of the 4 runner-ups come from the Big Ten. Just a side note, kind of wrap your brain around that. But back to Indiana, Trace Jackson Davis, just phenomenal for them. Jalen Hood-Schifino made a mistake in the game versus Illinois on Saturday, but the very next possession came back and hit a mid-range to tie the game back up. So he has what it takes, in my opinion. They might get Xavier Johnson back. Miller Kopp can knock down some three-pointers, man, shooting it over 46% from three. So that is my pick to go to the Sweet 16. Northwestern, they are a sneaky pick. They're starting to get together, man. They really are. One of the best backcourts in the nation with Boo Buie and Chase Audige. I mentioned the Purdue win earlier for Northwestern, so this team's really starting to get together. A sneaky pick to go to the Sweet 16. I'm not going to have them in the Sweet 16, but I would not be surprised. It's really cool that they have a chance to win the Big Ten over Purdue after the start Purdue had. So really cool to see. Another team in the Big Ten that I think has a chance, Illinois. The two Big 12 transfers has helped them so much. Matthew Meyer, Terrence Shannon, one of the best names in college basketball, Dane Danger. They had a really good showing against Indiana Saturday. Didn't come up with the win, but they had plenty of chances to, and in my opinion, was a positive for them. So Illinois, another sneaky pick for Big Ten, and I would not be surprised if they made it. So for my Big Ten picks, I'm picking Purdue and Indiana to go to the Sweet 16. Now we're starting to talk about the loaded conferences. Starting out with the Big East, I could see 5 teams from the Big East realistically going to the Sweet 16. I'm not going to pick 5, but I could really see it happening. Marquette, Xavier, UConn, Creighton, Providence. I can see all 5 of those teams going to the Sweet 16. My picks from this conference, I'm going to pick Marquette and Creighton. Marquette has won 8 of their last 9, one of the hottest teams in basketball. They just went into Creighton last night, and won 73-71. Huge game for Tyler Kolek, Cam Jones. This team just has it all, man. They really do. Shaka Smart has been unbelievable for that program. So Marquette is one of my picks. They just an awesome team. They score so much. And Tyler Kolek, one of the best point guards in the country, just dishes it out like crazy. He doesn't score the ball that much, but last night he made some much needed and important shots for them to win that ball game. For Xavier, no real reason why I'm not picking Xavier to make it to the Sweet 16, but these past couple weeks just have not shown the best Xavier team. Sule Boom has just been amazing for them. Fremantle, when he is healthy, this team is unreal. But they've lost 3 of their last 4, and last night they lost to Villanova at home. Just a pretty bad loss for them. So I'm going to pick Xavier to not make the Sweet 16. Would not be surprised if they do. Sule Boom is just so good, man. He's so good. So fun to watch. The second Big East team I picked to go to the Sweet 16 are the Creighton Blue Jays. Man, this team, when they are hot, this team is so good. This team, this whole season has been a team full of runs. They started off 6-0, beating my Razorbacks in the Maui Invitational. And if you hadn't seen that game or seen the highlights of that game, go back and watch that, man. It was amazing. Went to overtime. I think Creighton won 90-87. Just both teams were on fire, but Creighton was a better team that night. This team is just so good, man. They have all the weapons to reach the Sweet 16 and even further. They are a sneaky pick to even reach the Final Four, because when they get hot, when Baylor Shireman gets hot, man, there's no stopping them. The Providence Friars have also been so good this season, led by Bryce Hopkins, averaging 17 points, 9 rebounds, Devin Carter. Then when you got Ed Cooley at the helm, man, this team can go anywhere. They really can. They're actually playing right behind me. They're playing against UConn tonight, so that's a big game for Big East. So, man, just every night's a big game in the Big East, especially from here on out. That'll be a fun conference tournament in Madison Square Garden, and I really can't wait to watch that. And the best conference in the nation, the Big 12, the most fun conference, the most fun to watch, the best teams, some of the best players. I believe this conference will have the most teams in the NCAA tournament. And I think that's Kansas, Kansas State, Baylor, Iowa State, Texas. Who am I missing? TCU, Oklahoma State, that's 7. And West Virginia was going to be in here, but they had a really bad loss to Texas Tech at home. And I believe that's going to knock Huggins and West Virginia out of there. But maybe 7, for sure 6. Oklahoma State's right on that verge. But I believe the way they've been playing, they should get in my opinion. But yeah, Kansas, you know Kansas. To me, they are a lock in Sweet 16. Jalen Wilson, Grady Dick, McCullough, DeJuan Harris. Man, this team has it all. Bill Self, arguably the best coach in the nation. So never count out Baylor. I mean, never count out Kansas, obviously, and I believe they'll go really far. Might even be my pick to win it all. Baylor, the three-headed monster man, LJ Cryer, Adam Flagler, Keontae George, top 10 pick. Also, Langston Love can throw in 20 when he needs to. Jonathan Tchamwa just came back from a really terrible leg injury from last season, and the defense he provides, the scoring he provides, he just does a little bit of everything for that team. Obviously, Scott Drew, him and Bill Self, two of the best coaches in the game right now. Moving on to Texas, Rodney Terry filled in for Chris Beard, and this team has not looked back. They have not looked back. Marcus Carr can do it all for this team. Sir'Jabari Rice, one of my favorite players in college basketball. Timmy Allen. Texas can go really far. Kansas State, they got Marquise Noel, the point guard, the smaller point guard, but man, he can do it all. Keontae Johnson, the transfer from Florida. If there was a transfer of the year award, this guy deserves it. That's how good he's been. He's been probably the second best player in the Big 12 behind Jalen Wilson. So those are my four locks: Baylor, Texas, Kansas, and Kansas State. Those are my four Sweet 16 picks from the Big 12. Iowa State, nothing against Iowa State or TJ Otzelberger. On the offensive side, it just scares me. And I don't really know how many teams you're going to beat scoring 58 to 65 points in the NCAA tournament. So we'll just have to see. TCU, really the only thing scaring me back is that it's kind of a one-man show, two-man show. You got Mike Miles, obviously the leader, one of the best scorers in college basketball. Damian Ball has really turned into a second guy for that team. So that's the only thing that scares me about them. So yeah, to recap, I'm picking the Big 12 to produce the most Sweet 16 teams. Nothing bold or shocking there. I believe the only competition they'll get is the Big East. I think the Big East could produce 4 or 5 teams as well. So 4 teams for the Big 12, 2 for the Big East, 2 for the Big 10, 2 for ACC, and 2 for SEC, and then the other conferences 1. So those are my picks. Obviously could be extremely wrong based on what matchups and regions and everything, just how it lines up. But if I had to pick, those would be my realistic choices to make the Sweet 16 from each conference. So